In order to achieve the effect where one photograph slowly blends into another, we're going to use the gradient tool to draw in a layer mask. So from Bridge, I'm going to select both of these images and then use Tools, Photoshop, and then load files into Photoshop layers. That tells Bridge to open up both of those images and put them into a single document in Photoshop. And in fact, on the layers panel, here we can see the layer on top is the door knocker and the layer below is the incense layer. If I ever wanted to change the stacking order, I can just click and drag one on top of the other. It just depends on how you want to visualize the images and the masking that you're doing. Now, if we remember from the previous video that where the mask is white, we can see the contents of a layer, and where the mask is black, the contents are hidden, then we can easily apply that knowledge when using the gradient tool in a layer mask. Now, before we add a layer mask, I want to make sure that the top layer is targeted, and then from the bottom of the layers panel, I'll click on the mask icon. We can see that the mask is white, so let's tap the G key and that will select the gradient tool. And just to make sure that we're all starting at the same place, I will right-click or control-click on Mac and reset the tool. I'm also going to tap the D key. That will give me my default foreground and background colors, so my gradient will be drawn from white to black. I've got the linear gradient selected, so if we go from white to black and white reveals and black is going to hide, we can slowly fade out the door knocker as we drag over to the right. And if we hold down the Shift key, that's going to draw a straight line. Now the length of the gradient is going to determine the transitional area. If I click and drag a very short gradient, there will be a short transition. If I click and drag a very long gradient, there'll be a nice long transition. And we can redraw the gradient as many times as we want in as many directions as we want until we get the exact blending that we need between the two images. If you drag out a gradient and it's the opposite from what you want, you can use the Properties panel by selecting Window and then Properties, and you can scroll down and quickly invert the mask. Or you could just use the keyboard shortcut Command-I on Mac or Control-I on Windows in order to invert the mask itself. We're not limited to a linear gradient. If we want to switch to the radial gradient and then click and drag out a gradient, we can do that as well. When you have time, you can explore with the additional gradients here. I kind of like the reflected gradient as well. In addition, if I ever need to reposition the mask or the layer independently from one another, I can unlink them by clicking on the link icon in the Layers panel. Now I can select the image, and with the Move tool selected, I can reposition the image, but the mask stays still. I'll undo that using Command-Z, or I can click in the mask and then reposition the mask while the image stays still. Again, I'll undo that using Command-Z. If I want to view the mask, I can hold down the Option key on Mac or the Alt key on Windows and click on the mask, and then click the eye icon in order to toggle the layer visibility. All right, I'll return to the gradient by tapping the G key, select the linear gradient, and then quickly just drag a gradient from left to right to create the effect that I'm after. So there you have it, an easy way to blend one image into another using layer masks in Photoshop.